Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Bit of a different video. It's been a while since I've done one of these. The last one we did was the update for the Resident Evil 7 Samurai Edge, or the Albert Wesker model. And after I revisited that project, it actually made me want to revisit other projects I've done before. Not the pulse rifle, because that took far too long to revisit, but there was definitely some other 3D printed projects around Airsoft I've worked on since those that I wanted to showcase. And this is an update to the STI Eagle 6.0 video. So if you watched that video already, you're familiar with how we created using the Hi-Capa from Airsoft, finding the lower that matches the STI Eagle. The only thing we couldn't quite replicate was the slide itself. But this is the version you may have seen. And if you're already spotting some differences from the last video, that's because there has been, because this is an update. So we're going to be going through some of the updates and changes that I've done to this pistol to make it even more like the actual STI Eagle from Resident Evil 3. So, enjoy. That's the STI Eagle. Slightly different from the previous version, because you probably already noticed the slide is actually smooth. Basically, what I've managed to do is get hold of another Hi-Capa similar to the previous version I had, and it had a smooth slide on it. It was chrome and black, so I've actually managed to spray it black, and you know what? It looks pretty good. I have already scratched the slide, which you'll probably see later on in the video. But, you know, as it goes for the Eagle 6.0, it's pretty good. The only thing missing there is the actual lettering. Now, the previous version had this rail mount for the scope, so you're quite familiar with that one. Very bulky, very chunky. And you know what? It was the first time I ever tried designing anything. So I went back to the drawing board and I made this one. So as you can see, it's a lot cleaner, very clean compared to the original. Also, when you compare it with the STI Eagle, which Future Full of Life, if you want to throw that up on the screen, that would be very helpful. You can see the grooves are actually very, very similar. The shape, obviously I've designed it to go on a rail, that's why I painted it black and silver, so it looks like just the silver part, and it looks really, really good. Now, that is the original slide that was on the pistol. We actually did a better painting job in the end, because originally we painted it with acrylic and it was a bit naff, but we sprayed it up black. But we have, you know, we preferred the smooth version. So, you know, it was all right at the time, but, you know, for me, that looks better as it is than the original, because that engraving, I don't even have a clue if it's supposed to say anything in the language or not. I have no idea. It could say this pistol's dog shit for all I know. Yeah, so the blank slide on it definitely looks better. What does it look like with the rail on, though? So, there you go. So once again, do that side-by-side comparison. You can see the rail now looks a lot better. It's getting closer to how the STI Eagle should look. So side-by-side, you can see that looks a lot better and closer to the actual STI Eagle. Honestly, really happy with that smooth slide. It just seems to make it look better. The improved mount, once again, just makes it look so much better. And you know what? It's actually stronger than the original design and smaller, whereas the other one was a little bit clunky. Honestly, really happy with how it turned out. It hasn't got like the 3 or 4 stud markings at the bottom of it, because it's not mounted to the actual lower like the original rail scope support was. But that's as close as I can get it. But it looks so much better than the original. It really, really does. Comparing it to the original, as you can see here, it just looks so clunky and poor quality, whereas this one just bolts in, as you can see there underneath, slides on, and no problem. Honestly, so simple to mount, more durable, it's sleeker, it's better quality, absolutely happy. Now, funnily enough, it still allows you to aim through the red dots, but you can just see the difference between it. So there's also a few other subtle changes that have changed between the version previous and this one. Just try and get it in the light there. You know, it was kind of fun trying to film this. You know, I do apologize where the camera wobbles. You know, I haven't got an expensive setup. This is the best I can do. But what you're noticing here is the trigger and the actual safety on the grip. They're actually chrome, where the previous version wasn't. So that actually, once again, when you look at the STI Eagle, looks even closer to it. When you just look at that little detail, those two things just make it look so much closer to the original. And it's only a small change, but absolutely looks much better. And it's amazing the difference it makes. You know, there are still a few subtle things that are missing, you know, but, you know, I'm trying to recreate a pistol you cannot buy anymore. I've looked, I've searched high and low. I've tried to find the slides. I've tried to find everything about it, and this is the best I can do. But what's missing is the scope, which once mounted, there it is. There you go. That is an even better looking STI Eagle 6.0. Now, that isn't the update, believe it or not. That's a pre-update, because there's more.
What did he say?
You see, one thing about this pistol that is always going to bug me is that I don't have the slide that says Eagle 6.0. Now, trust me, I have searched high and low. I can't find it pre-owned. It's certainly not made anymore. And anywhere I've got close to finding it is like wanting it from abroad, and where I don't trust the currency conversion, or I don't trust whether it will be shipped or the import. But trying to find an STI Eagle slide, especially one that's going to be compatible with the WE Hi-Capa base, as far as I'm concerned, it's practically impossible. But you know what? That isn't going to stop me. Because I got to thinking, I'm getting better at editing and 3D printing, you know. The first ever project I did with a pulse rifle really set me off on a tangent. I've got an updated printer. I now have a Bamboo P1S. Is it P1S? Yeah. I now have a Bamboo P1S printer. And, you know, you can just see the quality change in the prints. You know, the pegboards and all that behind the gun. 3D printed. I absolutely love the things you can create on a 3D printer, because I can't get hold of certain clamps and mounts and trays and things like that. I can now print them. It's amazing the things you can make. And I've always said in Airsoft, so if there's something I can't find in the Airsoft world or buy, I try to make it. So I got thinking, could we make a 3D printed Hi-Capa slide that's compatible with WE parts, durable enough to actually be used in game, and actually recreate the slide with the engraving with the Eagle 6.0. So I got searching and I couldn't find everything I need. I did manage to find a WE prototype template. It wasn't finished, it wasn't accurate, and it didn't quite work, but it gave me enough. So I had a look, and actually it has the licensing to allow you to edit it and remix it. So I started heavily editing it. And the result was a very long project that took me about 6 or 7 weeks. And the result was a lot of 3D printed prototypes. So, as you can see, I have made many prototypes trying to get this thing to work. You can see where the lettering isn't quite good. I was trying to get the dimensions right. Each version got closer. The lettering got a bit more detailed. The Eagle, I couldn't quite find the Eagle that matches the STI, but I found one close to it. I was struggling to get the housing to fit. Wasn't quite right. Needed a lot of modifications to allow it to fit properly, to allow it to keep the spring in the nozzle housing in, because it would either fall out or get jammed, get chewed up inside. But, you know, some prints definitely looked better than others, you know, but I kept working on it. Some of them had small designs, like gaps in the 3D printer after editing it, that I had to rework, but I managed to do it, because here it is, the finished prototype working, the Eagle 6.0 slide. It's even got the little Kendo badge on the other side for Kendo's gun shop. But that looks amazing, and it was hard work. Now, funnily enough, that isn't the one you were looking at previously. You'll notice the triggers weren't chrome. That's the original. So to do this project, I needed more than one Hi-Capa. I needed internals from other Hi-Capas to be able to make sure it fits, get it all to test, and hopefully not break anything in the process. So I ended up with a second Eagle. And trust me, it took a long time to actually get this slide right. In fact, let me show you the worktop just to show you the progression and the hard work that went into this slide. There it is. That's zoomed out. As you can see, there's a lot on there. And it almost tells a tale, because we started here with the basic frame templates. You know, we had to edit the files, we had to make them the right dimensions, we had to measure the Hi-Capa in every way, shape, and size just to work it out. Even the point of working out where, like, the grooves were, how big for the lettering here, you know, and it started off really well. We managed to find and create the style of lettering. It is close to the original font for the STI Eagle. They use a unique font that I couldn't find anywhere, but I managed to find one that is pretty close. So I created basically some 3D printed almost templates. And the idea is, what I could do is, once I have the slide on, I overlay the template, subtract it from the slide, and that is what created the indents there. Same with the little hawk. You know, I've got the little hawk there, or eagle, should I say. So same with the little eagle, you know, able to subtract that from the slide and work on it. And it progressed. So for each version I made, I was having to constantly make backups of each copy, but I was having to like test different versions. Some were, the rails were thinner and thicker, the housing units at the back, you know, even the length of the slide had to be tweaked. So as you can see, that one there's a lot shorter than that one. That was the original template, which I then had to edit to the right size. And each version kept spawning a new updated version. I even experimented with changing the lettering to make it more pronounced, because the original one, it was too fine. But then on the later version, by making the letters bold, it made the engraving a lot deeper and wider, allowing the printer to capture the prints. Then you can see here where all these colors start coming in. This is where I'm having to tweak everything, you know, the spaces on the rail, you know, making it the right dimensions so it slides on smoothly. Because you've got to remember, this is going to be a functional slide. It needs to work. Tweaking the housing at the back, constantly removing bits, adding bits, experimenting with ideas for the iron sights I'll eventually build, making indents using blocks and removing the slide from the block to create them to then edit it later on. You know, even to the point where you can see here, so once we got to a certain point where we were printing prototypes and testing it, we were finding that the actual inner barrel and the actual spring rod guide and the plug weren't quite fitting, so we were having to trim away on that, making it right. This is where we finally got the housing right. That's why it's all in different colors, because we had to shave away everything, get all the measurements absolute perfect so it all fits in and holds. And then, as you can see, we carried on making lots of other little tweaks, editing like how the housing sits in it, how snug it is, making sure it's got the right indents for the right parts of the housing, and it just carried on. And as you can see, each version is where we had to tweak something, and then when we were printing it, we were finding other errors, so we're having to go back and tweak it, and each one kept spawning a new one, sometimes going off on little tangents. So as you can see, and like these here are some of the final versions where we finally got everything right, tweaked the last few bits, and started finishing it off with the iron sights and everything else. So as you can see, overall, it's a hell of a journey. But that got us to where we are now, which is this. And there we are. Now, what's really, really good is, so far, I put about 20 mags through a chrono, and the slide has held up. A couple of ones previous to it were working, but they had a few blemishes, like some holes where the ridges are, so I had to re-edit them. But this is the final version. Technically, this is the second to last final version, because with this one, there was just some minor tweaks I had to make, which I made on the actual slide itself by filing away a few bits, and it allowed it to fit perfectly. I actually have a new version of that printed with those adjustments in. It fully works, but as that's a working slide, that is the one I'm going to take to my next Airsoft game and basically have a play around with and shoot stuff and see how it holds. So this is where we are now, where we've now got a functioning Eagle 6.0 slide with the markings, with the engravings. Now, I've put about 20 mags through this so far through a chrono. It's held up absolutely fine so far, which is really, really good. You know, touch wood, none of the slides actually broke from use. It was due to ill fitting and things like that where they had issues. But this version's been brilliant. Now, this is the second to last version because where the grips were, there were some holes in the previous version. I had to just re-edit it to get them out, get the actual slide working well. Now, one thing I was worried about is the slide. One thing about the slide is it was a little bit thicker. It was a bit thicker because of the strength in the metal slide, so I was worried the rail wouldn't fit on. But luckily enough, when I bring it back into camera, even though it's wider, the slide does fit. And it racks, no problems. So that was really, really good because that means I didn't have to go back to the drawing board with the scope mount. But there you go, already looking even better. All it needs is a scope, which I've actually ordered. You know what? Really, really happy with it so far. Now this version, the 3D printed sights are currently only temporary. So they're actually just green filament in there. That's actually green glow-in-the-dark filament, so they will glow in the dark. But I do want to replace them with fiber optic sights. My other slide, which is the backup in case anything happens to this, will have fiber optic slides. But you know what? They don't look too bad. And the fact that the glow in the dark as well, filament, actually works pretty well, surprisingly. But yeah, really happy with it, how it's turned out. There's the second one I made. This is the one with fiber optic sights. You can see straight away how much they glow with it in the light. But that is the finalized version with all the amendments that I'd made from the previous one where I had to sand a few bits and whatnot. But this one is fully working at the moment, so it's the one I'm going to use for testing and just go have some fun with it. And if it breaks, I've got a replacement. That's the whole point of this. With it being 3D printed, if they break, I can replace them very easily. But you know what? The fact that it's held up so many mags so far, dead happy with that. Like I say, there were a few issues during the prototypes. You know, we chewed a few nozzle springs. You know, had to make lots of adjustments, but we got there in the end. So you'd think that'd be the end of the video. What else can I do? I've built the slide, the rail, the scope. Well, I decided to channel me in a Goku and go further beyond.
And this is to go even further beyond.
See, I've got two STI Eagles now. I've got the one with the metal slide, you know, the workhorse, different design to the other one. And then I've created that Eagle 6.0 slide with standard internals. I thought to myself, well, actually, I've got this third Hi-Capa because I had to buy the same design as the original to get the smooth slide to be able to replace the one with all the engraving on. And then I'm thinking, well, what do I do with the one with all the engraving on? It says I could run it as a Hi-Capa, I could sell it. But I thought to myself, well, what if I could edit it? Because the difference along the top of the gun is the outer barrel. That's it. That's the only difference, how it's got this ridge and how you see the slide's got it cut out. Compared with that one, which is just standard internals. With it being standard internals, yeah, it's a smooth barrel. It's got the long rod. I actually made a 3D printed short stroke kit, which actually was a design to stop it going too far back when it racked. Without that little short stroke kit, the slide would actually go too far back and jam. So it works really well. But that is very different to the internals of the other Hi-Capa. Now, I will do a side-by-side comparison of them later on in the video. But I thought to myself, could I just take the slide I've already perfected and edit it to fit the other one? So I did. And there it is. So that's the third Hi-Capa that I bought for parts. With the slide, all I had to do is change it. And as you can see on the top, I've removed that section. Quite a simple process, allowing the internals from the third Hi-Capa to fit into the new slide. It also means that slide is compatible with the other one if I ever wanted to have all three with it. But there you can see, that's the original one with the engraving on that I didn't quite like, that I replaced for the smooth one. And now we've got this one. I love it. Brilliant. So all I need to do is basically test this one as well. I've only put about 4 or 5 mags through this, but so far it's held up absolutely fine. It locks back on empty sometimes due to some internal differences. You know, once again, it's only got the filament in. It's already got the fiber optic at the front. But it actually doesn't look too bad. Now, like I say, I am going to do a comparison of the internals just for anyone who's curious about and what the differences are. But I've basically ended up now with three Eagle 6.0s. Bit like my pulse rifle project where I started off with 1, I ended up with 2. I just had to go that bit further beyond, and instead of 1, I've now got 3. Honestly, I love it. I'll probably keep the metal one as is. I love the second one for how close it is to the original, and then I've got the third one, which honestly is just for fun. I might sell it, I don't know. You know, I don't really need 3. All I'd have to do is print additional things. I've actually ordered an additional scope so I can have the second one fully kitted out. And there you go. It arrived yesterday. So just waiting for some scope mounts to complete it. But honestly, really happy with how it's all turned out so far. So the only thing is the grip on that one being WeTech. I'm not buying a third STI grip. They're not cheap, and I've got to get them from wherever. So I just thought to myself, well, actually, I have the grip from the other Hi-Capa, which I have replaced with an STI grip. It doesn't have the WeTech logo on because I don't like the grips with that WeTech logo on. So I just painted it up. So I've just painted a standard grip up, same color. I'm going to put it on that lower. Why not? It isn't STI like the others, but you know what? Doesn't have to be. Like I say, it's a spur. At this point, I'm pretty much just doing it for shits and giggles. So I'm going to go give these a test at my next Airsoft game. I'm going to quickly do a comparison of the internals. But before I do that, because this is something I forgot to do in the original video, because unfortunately the first making of the STI Eagle video had a few issues. I had a few problems with recording and editing. So I ended up having to like salvage what I had. And there was one thing that I missed and lost, and I didn't realize it until after I released the video. And that is I didn't describe how I painted the grips, just in case anyone wanted to know. So I'm going to show you dead quick. So the first part of it was a plastic primer. Now, honestly, I just used a bog standard auto car, you know, from a car shop, plastic primer, spray paint, a couple of coats on that. Absolutely brilliant for just making sure the paint adheres to it. The paint itself, the color, I just simply got this. Now, it's used in a lot of model painting and stuff like that. I'm not sure if it's universal across countries, but that's the TS-24 purple. And it is just the perfect purple I could find to copy the purple from the grip of the STI Eagle. Ever going to get fed up saying STI Eagle? If we did a little counter on that, it'd probably be pretty high. In fact, for future, like, what are we on so far?
It's over 9,000!
Anyway, but yeah, it's really good. Funnily enough, the same brand here is the same brand I used on the pulse rifle. Obviously not the color. A purple pulse rifle may look funky, but not quite what I was going for. But yeah, it's such a good quality paint. Applied it in layers and then topping it off with about 2 layers of clear lacquer. And once again, I've just used automobile lacquer paint designed for cars that was withstand wind, rain, sun, chips, stones, birds, insects, you name it. Which I think's ideal for something that's going to be hard wearing on a pistol grip. So 2 coats of that, job done. And it was enough to, well, more than enough to do all 3 and beyond. So yeah, so that's how I painted the grip. So apologies that weren't in the first video, but it's in this one. And then the last part is just to show you the just differences of the internals between the 2 Hi-Capas. Because if you're ever wanting to like recreate something like this yourself, understanding the difference between the internals is actually quite key. I learned from a lot of my mistakes the differences between the slides and how they affect the functionality of it, you know, the recoil, the travel on the slide, and I had to learn as I go. So hopefully this will save you guys a bit of time if you ever tried, save you a bit of time if you ever tried to do this in the future. So we'll start off with the normal version. So for this, I just bought a Hi-Capa. It was a 6-inch split barrel, split slide Hi-Capa. I think it was very similar to the Dragon. It was like a Dragon 6.0 versus the Dragon 7.0. But the internals were just ideal as a standard Hi-Capa for what I needed for this. There were some subtle differences. So if you can get a standard Hi-Capa with a 6-inch slide and barrel and internals, it will make it a bit easier. But there was some subtle differences with the version I got, which means I had to change how I did the internals. So internally, there it is. So you can see the blowback housing unit, you know, like I say, getting that in. It's got the standard barrel, it's got the guide rod. But what I did to solve my overslide issue is I basically 3D printed a short stroke kit. Very specific measurement. It was about 17 millimeters I needed, but depending on how far your slide's traveling, you would vary that. But it didn't really make sense as to why I needed it, but it solved the problem. I also 3D printed my own plug, because the one from the 6.0 Dragon, as I'm going to call it, was only about half the size. Now, while it works and it fitted in there, it didn't go all the way to the end. So I was a little bit like, nah, I can't live with that. So I managed to find a file. I had to edit it to make it compatible, and it's now fitting perfectly. But yeah, so the only way I could fix the overslide was to put a short stroke buffer tube on, which, you know what, doesn't do any harm to the gun. You know, it still locks back, it still cycles pretty quickly. In fact, I'm really looking forward to using it, I'll be honest with you. But yeah, I'm playing this week and I can't wait to give it a try. But there you go. So you can see, it was just pretty much standard internals. Nothing majorly different. Works just like a normal Hi-Capa slide. Now that's pretty standard for most Hi-Capas. You know, it locks back when it needs to. It's brilliant. But there are some differences with the other version. So the other version, if I remember correctly, Future-Floodlight, correct me. So the other version of the slide was off the Hi-Capa. And if I remember correctly, I'm probably getting it wrong. I think it was the IREX Hi-Capa, WE Hi-Capa. And it's the one with the barrel difference on. But it also had some different internals. So when I opened it up, when I first upgraded it, it was quite interesting. Now this is just standard. And you can see there, this is what looks like a nice little bullet, which I thought was kind of good. It's almost the size of a 45 caliber by the looks of it. But it actually actually acts as a short stroke kit. Now this is the original version. It's got an upgraded hop-up unit, but everything else is standard. But one thing I noticed with this slide different to the previous one is this one has the short stroke buffer. It has those rubber bits there in the middle. So for some reason in the one I printed, it wouldn't travel far enough back. So first gun I had overslide issues. This one I had under, like it wouldn't slide far enough back. And the only way to fix it was for me to remove those rubber rings. Once again, it hasn't changed the functionality of the gun. It just allowed it to slide back. And I honestly, it baffled me. I couldn't quite figure out what the difference was. And it frustrated me because everything on it is pretty much identical. Yeah, where it sits for the housing, even the grooves, everything else, slightly off. And I mean only ever slightly, but actually in the wrong way that makes it work. Don't ask me how. Sometimes things just work out for a reason. So just a bit of a closer look for the camera, just in case you can't make it out. But there you can see where the short stroke like buffer rings are. So they're the things that I removed to actually allow it to slide properly. I do like that little bullet though. The only downside as well, because of that, the rod, so the recoil rod is actually shorter. So without that actual bullet on, the recoil rod is far too short. It's like I don't understand why they made it a shorter rod instead of just giving you a long rod and putting the short stroke kit on it. It's very different. I've never seen it in any other Hi-Capa that I've looked at. I even showed it a couple of friends who use Hi-Capas, and they found that fascinating. They think it's a very WE thing, is the way they described it. I don't know, maybe you've seen something different. Maybe you know more about Hi-Capas than me. And there you go. That's the scratch in the slide. Yeah, that nice paint job ruined just by putting the thing on, being a klutz. But yeah, if you know more about Hi-Capas and with all these things I'm talking about, feel free to put it in the comments. You know, I'd be really interested to try to understand why I couldn't get things to quite work without having to change some of the designs. It baffles me, but you know what? It works, and that's all that matters. But side by side, they look really good. I've now got the purple grip on it, as you can see. They've got the engraving, they've got the logos, the barrel's slightly different. Obviously, we know why the grip's different. But you know what? I can't decide which one I like more. I do like that outer barrel, but obviously the other one is more traditional to the STI Eagle. What do you think? Which version do you like? Do you like the plain one, or do you like the one with the custom barrel? I love both versions. I'm going to be absolutely honest with you. I can't quite decide between them, I'm going to be honest with you. But they're both going to come with me to my next Airsoft game, and I'm going to test the shit out of both of them, I assure you. So there you go. That's the STI project. As far as I'm concerned, done. Fully completed. Honestly, I don't think there's anything else I could do to improve that. I am really happy with how it's turned out. Honestly, the fact that I've got a slide with the lettering on, I just never thought it would happen. Honestly, there was times when I was editing the files and trying to get it all to work. I honestly thought to myself, am I just wasting my time? Am I just going to end up making a slide that is just a visual showpiece? But the fact that I've got one that is fully functioning and holding up and seems fully skirmishable, you know, there's TM pistols out there, Hi-Capas, that have plastic slides. So the fact that these are 3D printed and holding up so well so far, I'm gobsmacked about. I can't wait to test them. I can't wait to use them. I certainly can't wait to get a second stand for that pistol and the scope and get that in the collection. You know, the Resident Evil pistol collection's getting quite big, along with the rest of the guns. I should do a series, I suppose, at some point with all the different guns I have. But anyway, honestly, thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Please, you know, to some of the things I've commented on, if you can share insight, if you have ideas, if you can explain things that I've not been able to figure out, please feel free to put something in the comments. And you know what? Don't forget to hit that like button. And if you're new to my channel, so welcome. Thank you for being here to the end. Please feel free to check out all the other videos. I have other Airsoft videos similar like this, of varying quality, I'm going to be honest with you. Some of them are good, some of them bad, but they all so far seem to be well received. But I don't just do Airsoft content like this. I actually have Airsoft gameplay, so if you want to see Floodlight in action, if you want to see me get my ass kicked or me kicking people's ass, please feel free to check out the channel. I've got 2 playlists at this time of recording. One is where I started with a 360 camera filming gameplay, so you actually can control the camera. It was a very low quality Samsung 360 camera, but I've since then evolved. I've actually got myself a GoPro 360. I've got a new playlist with that new camera, much better quality, and what's really fun about it is you are seeing the gameplay almost from my perspective, and the best bit is you can turn that camera around. So if I'm getting shot in the back, you can rewind the video and turn the camera around to see who shot me. If I'm getting some sneaky kills on people and some people are sneaking up on me, all those little things, maybe even players off to the side doing dumb shit as happened in one episode, all those things can be captured on the camera, you know. So please feel free to check them out. But lastly, the other content I do is gaming content. So I do stream on Twitch. I do have a Twitch channel. I do have links on my About page, as well as on my YouTube channel to take you to those different channels. And you know what? That's ideal if you're a gamer. I play a lot of variety of games. I tend to do a lot of survival horror games. I am a big Resident Evil fan, so there's going to be a lot of Res Evil playthroughs on there. But yeah, so if you're a gamer, if you're an Airsoft, you know what, and you've enjoyed this content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It costs you absolutely nothing on YouTube, but it is absolutely priceless to me. But thank you very much, everyone, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye for now.
the hell?